Welcome back to the Family Movie Night podcast, where we want to help your family have better conversations around the content you consume. And you've probably already seen on your feed or on your YouTube description, this is a very special episode of the Family Movie Night podcast. Donnie, do you remember in the 90s and the 80s when you would get these sitcom episodes and there would be a very special episode of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like as soon as it came on, and like I said, this is a special episode. Like you got your popcorn, but you also got your tissues handy, but you also got you were just there. You were like, I don't know what you're about to present me with.
Yes.
But I'm here for all the emotion. Whatever happens, I'm here for it.
I'm ready to go.
Was that the episode that his dad showed up? Was that a very special episode? Because that is a very special episode.
No, I don't think it is. Well, a very special episode would always be that they would tackle some theme, like Saved by the Bell would have the one where they get introduced to smoking marijuana. And they're like,
the big one was like, I'm so excited.
Yes, caffeine pills. And then at the end of the episode, they would come out and be like, hey, we've had a lot of fun today with elephant poaching or whatever the theme was. And it's like, this is a serious problem. If you or anyone in your community needs to stop elephant poaching, then contact this number. So yeah, we're on a very special episode of the Family Movie Night podcast. And it's not because we're handling some really intense topic, but it's because we have some both exciting and maybe a little bittersweet news for some of you to announce. This is going to be, dramatic pause, the dramatic pause, last episode of the Family Movie Night podcast. For those of you who couldn't see it, Donnie once again moved his eyeball as close as he could to his camera and looked like a creature from an H.P. Lovecraft film. Donnie, I was also very confused because I don't know if everyone can see this. Donnie just put an emoji somehow into the chat, and it popped up on his screen. I don't know if anyone else can see that, but it was the cry face emoji for those who need to know. So let me explain what I mean by that. We have been doing this is, I think, episode 68, I believe. So over right about a year and a half now, we have been doing episodes weekly of the Family Movie Night podcast. And our goal has been to help families have conversations about their love of Jesus and his way of life centered around various kinds of content that they consume. And about a few weeks ago, as we recorded this, or at the point you hear it, it's probably been over a month or so. I started having conversations with Molly Parks, who is our children's pastor on the staff, and then with Sawyer, who is our student ministry resident, and kind of the teams that do our family ministry, about doing a additional family podcast to be able to help families have conversations about things that we would never be able to find a movie that would be helpful with, and to be able to help parents in additional ways to raise their kids to love Jesus and his way of life. And when we were having that conversation, we were asking, well, where does the Family Movie Night podcast fit into that? And the solution that we kind of came up with is, well, the Family Movie Night podcast and this new podcast should kind of integrate together. And the Family Movie Night podcast will become kind of a monthly segment on this new podcast. It'll be a way for us, once again, to continue helping families, as we say, build memories by watching movies together. And we'll still be kind of providing you with some ideas of things you could talk to your kids about. But it won't be in the same way we've been doing it now. I personally think it's going to be in an even better way than we're able to right now. And so I just kind of want to start gauging where our co-hosts are feeling about this, because I know there are some people who they are big feelers when they listen to, and they want to know, like, maybe you're a big super fan of this podcast, and you're worried, what does the villain, the cold-hearted villain of this podcast, what is he feeling about this new shift that is coming around? And so I want to ask you, Sawyer Hewlett, how you feeling? How you feeling about this new adventure?
I'm excited for it. My personality is I generally get excited at new things, and this is a new thing, and so that's exciting. But I think even more than that, I think the new podcast is going to have a much wider net of possible influence is the thing, and I think that that's really a great service that we can provide to our church. And on top of all that, I think that this segment that's going to be incorporated is going to enable me to watch movies that I enjoy a lot more.
Yes, Sawyer, as a single man, was forced to watch a lot of movies that are geared directly towards 7-year-old, and he has no 7-year-olds in his life.
And I have no 7-year-olds in my life, and so there were a lot of. I think it's become almost vernacular, not only on this podcast, but with people who have seen the podcast. That I have a specific demographic that I am not a part of, and so I'm excited to see where that's going to go. But no, I think. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add, I think the benefit of that is what kind of became clear to me the more we were doing this podcast was, by the nature of it, we really geared towards here are movies you could watch with your young children in their home or with your teenagers in the home. But what kind of became clear to me over the last year was how many families have even adult children still in their home, 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, and being able to now bring some movies in because all of us, and we'll talk about this more in a minute, all of us are going to be able to bring multiple movies in every month that can span from a 3-year-old to a 23-year-old. And they could be movies that you can incorporate no matter what age your kids are. I think that's kind of exciting and has lots of possibilities in that. So go ahead, Sawyer. What were you going to say about kind of the future of all this?
I was just going to add, I think that also the format of the new podcast is going to, I think like to the listener, it's just going to be a better experience than this. I am going to miss having, an hour and a half every other Saturday to just talk about movies. Something that you guys don't get to see all that often is the stuff that doesn't get recorded. And there's a level to which that is actually one of my favorite times of my entire week is the unrecorded stuff for this podcast of the three of us just joking around and stuff like that, talking about movies that we're not even necessarily covering. Right before we jumped on here, we were talking about Creed because I've been on a Rocky kicker this week, and I'm going to watch Creed today, and I'm excited.
Preparing for Creed 3.
Very excitedly preparing for Creed 3, and Nathan and I were just joking with each other about that. Donnie needs to hop back into the train and watch Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I mean, like there's so many things that you guys just don't get to see all that often. That's some of my favorite stuff that I get to do during my entire week.
Yeah, and I do think that's going to be part of the fun. Is there are going to be movies that we cover, and I think there will be an opportunity for us to be a little bit more informal with this new one because we have so many co-hosts, and especially when Heidi was on the podcast, we had so many people and so many things that we had to accomplish. If these episodes weren't going to be an hour and a half long, we had to really put a structure around it. And with this new format, because they're going to be a little bit shorter and a little bit more kind of free-flowing, we'll be able to kind of be more informal, and you'll see more of those kind of interactions, which I think will be fun. Donnie, what are your feelings around this transition, man?
Sucks. I'm done with you. No, I'm just kidding. No, but in all seriousness, I think there is a like a bittersweet thing to it because we have like probably built an audience that enjoys like our takes on different movies, our perspectives, because we all have very different lives. We have very different like perspectives, and like it's very interesting, especially being a father, to see, the perspective of another father, but also seeing the perspective of a mother and seeing the perspective of like a young adult and like seeing how they view these movies, because I think it helps us to kind of understand things, because I think what I've learned, like having worked with like student ministry and stuff, is that having worked with other people's kids and helping them navigate these things has helped me to prepare for the navigation I'll eventually have to do. And so I
Yes.
think I'm, like I said, like it's bittersweet, but I'm excited about the opportunity where we'll have a more, I guess, like a full breath experience that can like really help parents and families that, have different walks of life that maybe we don't get a chance to grasp and and
Yeah.
cover due to, some of the themes and some of the movies that we end up choosing.
Well, and I think that's a good point, Donnie. I think what is going to be exciting to me. So I'll kind of preview a little bit here what the new podcast is going to be. Because when you hear family ministry podcast, it doesn't maybe mean a lot. We're actually, we've toyed around with it. I think we've kind of officially come up with the title for the new podcast being the Not Great Parents Podcast. And the idea behind that really comes down to we as parents, one, often feel like we're not doing a great job. We feel like we're not great parents. And Molly and I, who are kind of taking the primary hosting job on that, we both are parents. We have kids right around the same age. Both of us have kids going into the preteen, teen years and kids who are younger. And we regularly talk to each other about feeling like we are the perfect people to host a not great parent podcast because we are not great parents. But, often what happens, I think, when you are a parent is your goal is, I just want to raise great kids. And, you get around other adults and people come and they go, you have great kids. You got great kids.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Donnie.
Well, I was thinking the thing I immediately thought of is that this transition feels similar to how like when you go into like your superstore and it has that restaurant that you like in the corner. That's what you get. You get a snack size version of the Family Movie Night podcast in the Not
That's
So
right.
Good Parents podcast. Like it's going to be that you get to get a sampling and you get to keep moving.
That's right. Yeah. And so the Not Great Parent podcast, the goal we're trying to do is to say most of us want to raise great kids. But the problem with greatness as being your goal is that greatness is always out there. It's hard to achieve. And so greatness gets seen in success, right? I want my kids to make the right grades, be involved in the right programs, do the right things. And primarily what greatness comes out in is there is a kind of life I want my kids to have. And we don't think a lot about the kind of person our kids become. As long as they make the grades, as long as they get the job, as long as they're respected by other people and seen as admirable, then I feel like, well, those are great kids. But we know that what it means to raise godly kids is for them to be good, not great. That greatness in the kingdom looks like the goodness of God. We did a whole series called Good Not Great about 2 years ago, looking through the Sermon on the Mount. And that was kind of where we started talking about this. And so the idea of this podcast is it's going to be Molly and I, and often interviewing different people in our church who are doing things, talking to other parents. You'll get to see glimpses into our children's ministry, into our student ministry. Sawyer is regularly going to come on and kind of talk about what does student ministry look like. It's kind of a segment. And then regularly you'll still hear from Donnie, Sawyer, and I as a segment on here's a way to, with the movies, and maybe even, we haven't talked about this, maybe even TV shows. We might even bring in TV shows and say, because I have heard from a mom who listens to this podcast, and she said, she actually said this to my wife, but she said, I wish they were able to cover TV shows because my teenager is less interested in watching movies with me, but she loves to sit down and watch TV shows. I would love to know what are some appropriate to teenagers TV shows I could watch. And, same thing. What are things we could talk about while we're watching it?
Just watch The Office, okay? Just watch The Office with your teenager. That's all you need to do.
That's all you need to do if your kid was born in 2001. So,
Hey,
but
1996, okay?
If they're not, no, I'm saying if they were born past 2001,
right?
They do. The Office came out when I was in high school, so you do not need to watch that. If your kid, because I'm going to tell Sawyer this. Eventually, people are going to talk about The Office the way you talk to me about the TV show Friends. So
that's true.
It's going to happen because Friends was the funniest show when Donnie and I were young. Is that not right? I mean, Donnie, everyone loved Friends.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, you can pretty much say a reference from a Friends television show, and you have a very high probability that someone's going to be able to finish the quote for you.
But now for people who aren't aware, because we have primarily parents listening to this, if you have a teenager who was not born, as they would say, in the late 1900s, if they were born, which is a terrifying thing to me. I was born in the late 1900s. If they were born in the 2000s, by and large, they look back on the TV show Friends and they think it is corny and cheesy and old-fashioned, whereas it was very edgy for its time and, you know, modern and hilarious. And the Office will go the same way. And
yeah,
so
what I say to those people is that smelly cat. That's all I got to say to you.
That's right. So anyway, yeah, our goal is to be able to once again have this segment. Like Donnie said, it's a good way. It's like you're walking through a superstore, and sometimes you need to stop. You need to get some toilet paper. Mm-hmm. We can be your toilet paper.
We are your essentials when you didn't know you need them.
You don't like to think about us, but we're there.
We're bringing the pandemic back, baby, and we're giving you all the toilet paper.
Just imagine when you go to the grocery store and you get to that line and where that spot where all the gum and all the candies that your kids grab off of the side items, we're there. They're like, hey, you should really have some family movie night podcast, but in a bite-sized chunk.
That's right. That's right. And so I think what we're excited about is to be able to, one, like we said, cover lots of different movies. And I think by and large, what I have heard from most parents that they have used this for, which I think is great, is that they are using it to find movies to be able to watch with their kids and to be able to hear, and they probably don't need to hear 25 minutes on each movie about the themes. You guys would probably get more out of it if we had a shorter, maybe in total 15-minute episode, and we were able to bring 7-8 movies out with just a sentence or two of a theme to give you something to talk to your kids about. And so that's what we're going to try and approach as our part of this new podcast. But you'll start seeing the Not Great Parents podcast showing up next week. The very first episode, we've already started kind of working on that. And I'll give you this little bit of a glimpse of what's going to happen. Sawyer has written a segment for that very first episode where he's going to explain for parents what the new social media app Be Real is. So if you as a parent are freaked out because you don't understand new apps and technology and kind of things that are going on with your kids, Sawyer's that's going to be part of one of a kind of regular segment. He'll come on and just go, hey, here's something you need to know that your teenager is using or is a part of. And not only Sawyer, maybe you can talk more about this. The goal is not to say and here's what you should be terrified of.
No, I think my, just to kind of break the fourth wall a little bit, I think my role on this new podcast is going to be very much, supplemental and, because I think the main show is going to be very much devoted to a encompassing view of parenting. And I think what I'm excited about is how I can kind of talk about how raising your teenager matters just as much, but in a very different and unique way from raising a second grader or something like that.
Well, and I think
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think in particular, your role is to give them the view from their kid.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Like you said, you're not a parent, so it's not like you have some expertise, wisdom on here are the tips I used with my 17-year-old.
Yeah.
But you do have the tips of, hey, here's what kids are saying that they're probably not saying to you. And they are saying it to me, to Sawyer, not to me, Nathan. They're saying it to Sawyer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. Look, as we're filming this, we're going to film that segment next week. This Sunday, I'm going to make my final attempt in writing that segment. And I'm just going to ask the students what it is about Be Real that they like and dislike and stuff like that, just to be able to gauge, this is, and that's what I'm looking forward to, being able to kind of translate some student stuff into the verbiage that parents will understand. So,
well, and I think even more, I know you and I had this conversation, and I haven't seen the final script, but I know in the conversations as we've been, kind of writing it and stuff, is the goal is not to make them afraid of this, but to say, hey, here's how you could actually use this with your teenager, and it would actually help your relationship with them to do that.
the whole first section of that segment is literally just me explaining what Be Real is and how it works so that you can use it is the thing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of different content you're going to be able to get, and that'll drop next week. And then in just a few weeks after that, because we need some time to kind of figure out what the format of our podcast, our segment is going to look like. You will hear back from Donnie, Sawyer, and I, and we're going to have a plethora, you could say a cornucopia of new movies to bring to you. And here, this is on the spot. So we this may be a horrible idea. Oh, Donnie's got a shocked face coming out. He's got a shocked face. Shocked emoji, I should say. I want to know, in the last few weeks, what is a movie that you might be able to recommend to parents? And you might say, hey, this is a good one to be able to watch with your kids that you think of as just really fun. So Sawyer has his eyebrows raised.
Give me a second. I need to check something.
Okay. Sawyer's going to say, so I'll say this one. This one I actually watched a few weeks before, but it's still relatively new to Netflix. If you have not watched the Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio with both your children and I even think middle school age, it is a stop motion animation similar to like Nightmare Before Christmas, retelling of Pinocchio. But if you're not a fan of Guillermo del Toro, and the only reason I say that is because that's actually the title of the movie is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. So you can find that on Netflix. But if you've never seen any of his films, he does this beautiful way of telling like these fairy tales that always kind of bring out the more complex and dark side of fairy tales. And in particular, where Pinocchio has pretty much always been a movie about being honest in the sense that like, don't tell lies because, your nose will grow and all that. This is a movie that's about being honest about the pain and the sorrow of life and death, which sounds really like dark and like maybe I don't want to watch it with my kids. I found it, my kids loved it. They've seen it twice now. There's music in it. It's musical. It's beautiful animation. It has lots of fun, lots of kind of adventure to it, but then also has this ability for us to be able to talk to our kids about, hey, there is sadness and sorrow in life, and it's important for us to deal with that. But and as opposed to this movie where there's kind of a fairy that makes the whole thing happen, we have God and we have the Holy Spirit who lives within us, and he can guide us through those difficult times. So that's one that I kind of want to recommend if you haven't seen it, to kind of hold you over until we get back. That's my little snack to give you. So Sawyer, you look prepared now. Do you have a movie?
I have actually a double feature. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Because something that Nathan and I slightly agree on is that Christopher Nolan as a director is slightly overrated. Okay. However, is that fair to say you find him to be slightly overrated?
No, I think he's probably correctly rated for non-film bro people. I think for the people you and I interact with on Twitter and social media,
yes,
he probably is overrated in their mind. But I think he is correctly rated for most people who just hear, oh, Christopher Nolan, that's probably good. That's the correct response to think.
However, there are two movies, one of which we were going to cover coming up.
Yes.
That I do want to mention is the thing where I think, on a weekend, you got nothing going on. You can watch these two movies and have a lot of great
especially with your teenagers.
Yeah. The Prestige, which is his third or fourth movie, I believe, which came out in 2006, I believe.
I think it's technically 5, but yeah.
Really?
It's following Memento, Insomnia.
That's what I was forgetting. Yeah.
Batman Begins, and
then The Prestige. And so there's The Prestige, which is a movie about these illusionist magician guys who kind of they get competing with each other, and it's very toxic. And
Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. It's really fun to watch them together.
It's probably my favorite Hugh Jackman performance, and it is excellent. Then the other one is another movie that weirdly gets hated on by a lot of people. Maybe Nathan, I don't know. Interstellar. I love Interstellar, and I think you and your teenager would have a lot of fun. That's a movie that's about a dad raising a teenager, two teenagers, And I think that you and your children will have a great time watching.
I don't think Interstellar is weirdly hated on. I think I am not as high on it as most people. Maybe our conversation about that made you think that, but I think by and large it's pretty widely beloved. So
maybe
I
love Interstellar.
I think outside Insomnia, he has not really made a movie, and maybe Tenet, which is his most recent one, that have not been just widely. This is the greatest thing that's come out of all time. Interstellar was huge. So, I agree. Both of those are really good. And both of those, so Prestige has a lot of good abilities to talk about competition and how when competition becomes unhealthy. And Interstellar obviously has a lot of themes about love and family and all those kind of things, which he doesn't fully pull off. But that's okay. And so we can talk about that another time. Donnie Dorsey, what movie do you think is really important that right now you've seen recently you think families would enjoy?
I'd say fairly recently that I watched was probably, and you mentioned it earlier, the DC League of Super Pets. I thought that was pretty good.
That was a pretty fun, just like a fun, especially if you've got kids under the age of like 10. That's just like perfect for them.
And then there was two other ones. There was Luck that was like on Apple TV. I thought was pretty good.
My daughter Destiny, it might be one of her favorite movies of all time.
Really?
She has watched it multiple times.
Oh, my daughter watched it and she laughed every time when we watched it. She laughed each time because the comedy for it was like right on spot. It was really good.
For those who don't know, DC League of Super Pets, it's Dwayne The Rock Johnson as Crypto, Superman's dog, and basically all of the superheroes from the DC universe, Superman, Batman, Aquaman, all of them get taken hostage and lose their powers. And there's like a meteorite or something like that that gives powers to other their animals or something. And it becomes a lot about, once again, to talk to your kids about what makes a person a hero. What is heroic to God? What is heroic in the kingdom of God?
Yeah, and there's the one other one I was going to say is Rumble.
That's on Paramount Plus, I think, or maybe on Prime now.
I can't remember the exact. Maybe Paramount
Sawyer,
Plus.
will you look that up while Donnie's talking?
Yeah, but it's available. It shows like how the idea of when your family has this legacy, and like sometimes the legacy can kind of overshadow like you as a person, and like sometimes you get caught up. You sometimes avoid the legacy of your family, even if it's not necessarily a bad thing. One, either because you feel like you're never going to live up to it, or because you feel like it's just not the direction you want to go. And then you start to find out more about that. He starts to find out more about his family. He goes, you know what? I'm going to embrace this. And I think it's such a good conversation to have with your kids, because a lot of times your kids don't understand the reasons why you are the way you are, the way you do things. And some of it is because of what has endured in your life. And maybe it's an opportunity to have a conversation with your kids about, hey, look, I'm sorry. Or like, hey, this is why you see me do these things, because that transparency for your kids to kind of understand, hey, that isn't just being mean. He's really trying to process these things. Or mom's not being mean. She's processing feelings that, that were unhandled at, a certain age.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie for that kind of like talk.
Honest conversations with your kids. And so that's Rumble, which is that on Prime now?
I couldn't find it anywhere. I'm sure it's on something, but
okay. I'll look at it.
Let me look.
It was on Paramount Plus. That's where
while you're looking that up. Oh, while you're looking that up, in my research, I did discover one thing. Look, it's an intense movie, but I think it would be great with your older kids. The Woman King is on Netflix. I didn't realize that it just got dropped on Netflix. For your older kids, I think that would be a great movie to watch. It is quite a bit. You'd be pushing it. But I think that it's a great movie. Got some really good messages about, I don't know, about leadership, I guess is the best way to describe it. And about not having to lead from a place of dominance and rage and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
I can confirm Paramount Plus.
Yeah, and
Rumble.
It's on Prime too. I looked it up. It's on both of those. So Rumble is there. I will say this: if you watch The Woman King, because I know people would want to know this, I would want to know this as a parent. There is frequent mention, and I mean it's a plot point and a flashbacks to a sexual assault that happens in The Woman King, which you probably just want to be aware. It's not very graphic in what's shown. But it certainly is something, I would definitely make sure it's an older kid who's able to have those kind of conversations. Certainly teenager, I think, for that. So Rumble, it's on Paramount Plus and Amazon Prime. You mentioned Luck is on Apple TV Plus. Luck is great. It's about a girl who kind of is basically aged out of foster care. She's doesn't ever get adopted, and she thinks it's because she has bad luck, and she ends up chasing like a leprechaun to a world of luck. It's very much Pixar-esque in that now there's this whole like economy and world built around luck, and it's really kind of sweet and funny, and people I think would really enjoy that. So this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be able to do more of, is kind of bring more movies to you guys that you'll be able to kind of talk about and have a good time with. So I'm looking forward to being able to be a part of this new podcast. I know all of us are, and it is a little sad to not have weekly conversations about movies, but I think it's going to be better in helping you raise your kids to love Jesus and his way of life. And that new podcast is premiering next week on March 9th. We can't wait to see it come. So we look forward to continuing to partner with you in raising your kids to love Jesus and his way of life. We'll see you then.